Market location, a little bit about us. We have been going for over 50 years, and we're widely considered to be the root source of B2B data in the UK. We collect data directly from source, so we have a call centre in Sutton Coldfield, just outside Birmingham, which is fully operated by us, fully employed by us, and they are tasked with collecting data from every single business in the UK. I know I've spoken to some of you already, but you will have received calls from the 118 group asking to update your free directory inquiries listing. That's us, and we're able to collect that information on behalf of directory inquiries and around about 600 other directory services in the UK. We provide 97% of the search and directory market with our data, and that allows you, when you're searching for a hairdresser's in Heathrow or a restaurant in Ruislip, to get 100% accuracy from one record, whether that's online or through a telephone directory. What we then try and do is scale that up from a B2B point of view and allow businesses to identify key contacts within businesses they want to work with, key demographics, and also some of the firmographic information around those businesses as well. We provide a range of different services, but primarily I'm not here to talk about what we do. I'm here to talk about how you can use some of the data that you've currently got. The size of the business universe in the UK is about 5.5 million registered businesses and about 6 million businesses in total if you include self-employed and sole traders. Surprisingly, 95% of those businesses have got less than 249 employees. 78% have got less than 5. So we are a nation of shopkeepers. And it means that it can be quite difficult to find the right people within the right types of organisations. And obviously, if 78% of businesses have got less than 5 employees, finding the right person to speak to about the right thing can be challenging, it can be overwhelming, and it can be even harder when you scale that up to bigger organisations as well. So, what is B2B data? At the risk of being met with a silent room again, I'm going to throw that question out. What do you think B2B data is?
Very shy.
This is going well. This is going really well.
Is it data, Steve? Is it data that businesses use to talk to other businesses?
It could be, Tony. It could be. There's lots of different types of B2B data. So you've got firmographic data, which essentially is the information about a company. What that company does, how many staff it's got, its financial turnover, where it is, etc. Technographic data, that's essentially the technology that they use. So if you are in a business that is either technology-led or a sector that's technology-led, you will want to know either what technology people are using that may compete with you. So for example, if you were Xerox, Xero, you might want to know who's using Sage Accounting. If you were a CRM provider, you might want to know who's using HubSpot or who's using Salesforce to tackle that. Behavioral data, so how your customers behave, interactions that you have with them. This is all the stuff that you need to track and keep in-house and understand how you operate with the businesses that you currently work with. Contact data, it's fairly self-explanatory really. And there's lots of other types of data. My point is that there's a lot of data that you can get hold of, and that can be really overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for or you don't know how to use that data. So why is that data important? Well, to get information on how your customers operate, how your competitors are operating, can help you understand what you need to do strategically within your business. It can help you make more informed decisions around who you want to target, how you want to segment the information that you've got within your business, and actually who in your business is most appropriate to contact particular sectors and particular organisations. It allows you to tailor an offering as well. So if you don't know how your customers are behaving, or you don't know where they are, you don't really know what to say to them, how to say it to them, or how to sell it to them. And the better the data, the better the output. So it's really important that if you've got data, you're looking after it well, and you're maintaining it, and you're keeping it compliant, but you're keeping it up to date. Lots of different sources of data. Legacy data, so that's data that you've acquired over time within your business, data that you've acquired from businesses that you may have bought or partnered with, social media databases like LinkedIn, huge source of data, particularly in sales and marketing. It does tend to be the go-to to find organizations and people that you want to work with. The trouble with that is that LinkedIn has 857 million profiles. 550 million of them are either duplicated or out of date, which means if you rely on LinkedIn as a source of data, or you're working with a business that relies on LinkedIn as a source of data, you're already dealing with a data set that is 3/4 irrelevant. So it can be very difficult to find who you're looking for. And it is such a big database that you are looking for that proverbial needle in a haystack. Trade shows or industry events. I mean, obviously, if you're looking to collect data from today, it's going to be quite easy and straightforward because there's only a handful of you. Industry publications, third-party data providers. Data is everywhere, and you can access it in so many different ways. What you do with it once you've got it is probably more important sometimes than how you're accessing it. So why use it? Well, it can be effective use in several different ways. It can enhance your targeted marketing and improve sales strategies. I know there's a few people here from Rethink PR who will probably be used to using data to retarget, to understand how client campaigns should be activated. There's no reason why you as an individual or within your own organizations can't be doing this yourselves. But there are experts out there to help you. Drive customer engagement. So the more you have insight on your customers and how they behave, the more you can engage with them. I suppose it's a bit like going to a party and talking to someone, but not asking them any questions. Find out about the businesses that you want to work with and tailor the conversation that you're going to have with them based on the answers that they give you. Use the data effectively. Using the data effectively can uncover opportunities you didn't know about. So it might be that you've got a particular service or solution that you're trying to promote to a particular group of people, but that particular group of people aren't going to interact with you unless you know what their pain points are and how to deliver that to them. Using data to understand that and to build a more comprehensive understanding of how to go to market can be a huge advantage. So, do you need to buy new data? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say yes, because that's how I put shoes on my kids' feet. But not always do you need to buy new data. And actually, before you go and buy new data, have a look at the data that you've already got and how you're using that data. And there's a few things that you need to consider before you use the data that you've got and before you go out looking to buy new data. So, when was the data last used? If the data has been sat in your CRM or an Excel spreadsheet or someone's contact book for more than 12 months, that data will be out of date. It will be inaccurate, and data decays at a rate of about 30% a year, which means that you need to consider business moves, you need to consider personnel moves, businesses close, businesses grow, businesses shrink. This is all information that if you're not keeping track of, the messaging that you're going to send out is not going to be tailored. There's also some kind of fundamental things you need to understand as well. If you haven't spoken to a data record for more than 12 months, is that data record now on the telephone preference service? And if you haven't spoken to them for 12 months, you're not allowed to speak to them again until they interact with you. So have they put themselves on the telephone preference service? If they have, you shouldn't be cold calling them, which means you need to find a different way of engaging with them. Maybe that's through email. But if you haven't got the right email address, that record is now completely useless to you. Because you can't phone them, you can't email them, and you don't know where they are. Has that business moved? Have the people moved? What's the size of the business? When you spoke to it 12 months ago, it might have been 50 people, but it might be 70 people now. And those business needs have changed dramatically. Can you provide a service to 70 people, or have you got a service and solution that you should be offering that you weren't offering to 50 people? Are they trading or not? Businesses, unfortunately, close on a regular basis. I think we remove sadly, about 250 businesses a week from our database because they're no longer trading. We add probably about 126 new businesses on a weekly basis. So the gap is a lot bigger on the businesses that are closing. Response rates. Have you had a response back from a business since you last spoke to them? If you haven't, investigate why. It could well be that they're not trading anymore. It could well be that they're not there anymore. It could well be that the person you're speaking to has moved on. Also consider why you stopped using the data that you're now going back to use. What made you stop using that data? Is there something in that data that didn't work for you last time round? If you expect a different result from the same information that is now 30% worse than it was 12 months ago, you're only going to get the result that you probably deserve in using that data. So these are all really important points to consider. Cost is obviously an important point to consider as well. If you're going to go buy new data, ensure that you're not just making the investment on the data, but you're making the investment on someone being able to work that data. Otherwise, there's no point in going through that whole process. So what's next? If you're going to use data that you've got to solve some of the problems that I've just talked about, audit the data that you're going to be using. Now, anyone that's come today has got the opportunity to get a free data audit from us, where we will take your data in and we will take a look at it and provide a report back to you to tell you where those businesses are, what contact details that we have that you don't have, and just check some of the gaps that can be filled and enhancements that can be made along that data as well. Once you've got those gaps and enhancements filled and made, you've then got a brand new data set to start using. And some of those gaps and enhancements that we can make, or that any auditing business can make, could be really crucial. It could be things like staff headcount. It could be things like, depending on the business that you're in, but you might want to know how many car parking spaces they've got. There's all little different things within data that you can use to better understand the customers that you want to get. And then results of an audit can be used to decide on the strategy. If you don't have enough email addresses to kick an email campaign off, then you need to find someone to call the data, or you need to do a direct mail campaign, or you need to find a way of getting those email addresses in a compliant fashion. The businesses that you've now got, are they actually the businesses that you want to be speaking to? Now you've understood their market sectors and where they sit within the business landscape. Are they customers that you actually want? Are they businesses that you need to be speaking to? Or actually, do you need to go off and find out additional data to fill that gap? Before you do anything, before you go out and buy data from anybody, look at the data that you've got, try and understand it as best you possibly can. If it needs cleaning, get it cleaned, and then you can make a decision based on the results of that as to whether data is required beyond that. So clean data will also help you retain clients. The more you know about the customers you've already got, the better you can speak to them, and the more contacts that you've got of those customers, the wider that conversation can become. It might be that you're speaking to a decision maker in a particular department that buys your solution or service for a particular reason. Could well be there's another decision maker in another department that's also got a budget that you should be speaking to. Regularly auditing the data can also help improve engagement metrics. So if you're using the data from a sales and marketing perspective, which most people will be, understanding where there are problems within that data can help you understand where you've got problems within the sales and marketing campaign. Are you getting the emails delivered? If you're getting a huge bounce back rate, maybe some of those email addresses need looking at. If you're not connecting with businesses over the phone, maybe the telephone numbers need having a look at. If you're getting a lot of returns on direct mail, maybe those businesses aren't there anymore. So you can use the results of an audit to better understand the metrics of a campaign. You can also understand people moves, premises moves, and it helps ensure you know everything about the clients that you've currently got. So when should you buy new data? Well, if your data is out of date or non-compliant, that's when you should definitely buy new data. You can enhance the data that you've got by buying some of the bits and pieces that have been identified, but go out and search the market and find the right data supplier for you that's going to be able to give you the data that you need. If you want to increase the number of prospects that you've got outside of the data pool that you've already got, you're going to need to go elsewhere and find that information. If you've got a new team member on board, there's no point saying to a new team member, I need you to go and sell X, and here's data that we've had for 3 years, when you know that 35, 40% of that data is completely out of date. That new employee is now unmotivated, is getting a load of deadlines, and is not getting where they need to go to. So if you're going to grow your team, grow the asset of your business entirely. If you want to explore new sectors, if you've got new services or solutions that you're implementing, and when you're ready, it's vital that before you buy data, you've got a plan in place to use that data. If you haven't got a plan in place to use the data, buying the data is just a really expensive thing to do, and it's just going to sit there until you are ready. Once you are ready, the data is going to be out of date. So before you buy data, consider the investment in the whole picture. Are you ready to onboard that data? Have you got someone to work it? And are you going to get the results that you want? So when you're buying data, there are a few things that you should consider. How is that data collected? So I mentioned at the beginning, we have a call center where we collect data direct from source. We are the only B2B data supplier in the UK that contacts every single record that we have and understands who's at that business. Data is quite big, and there's a lot of it out there. So a lot of organizations will scrape that data from LinkedIn. Already mentioned that that's an out of date and untrustworthy area to get data from. There are other ways of obtaining data, and there's lots of different types of verification points along the way. Whoever you decide to buy data from, understand how they're collecting it, but understand what they're doing with it once they've got that data before they sell it to you. How are they verifying it? Have they checked that the people that they say that are at business A are actually at business A? What other information are you looking for within those businesses to help understand the data a little bit more? Ask them where they're getting it from, how they're collecting it, and what they're doing with it once they've got the data. What onward support will you get? So how often will that data be updated? If you've got a problem with the data, who do you turn to speak to? Are they just selling you a list and walking away, or is there a consultative approach to how they can work with you? Consider whether you're buying a platform or quality data. Do you need something that looks really good and has some fairly basic functionality, but ultimately the data within it is not great? Or are you looking for quality data and quality contacts? Consider what is needed for your business and where that fits within your business and how you're going to be able to use it. Does it do what you want it to do? So you might go out and buy data for a particular campaign that you want to run, but the data that you buy might not have the answers that you're looking for. So ask those questions when you're buying that data. Make sure that you're challenging the person that's selling you the data. Will it do what I want it to do? Will it have point A and point B within the data? How are you going to use it? So when buying data, it will be sold on different levels of license agreements, whether it can be emailed, whether it can be telephoned, whether it can be direct mailed. Make sure that the data you're buying can be used for the purpose that you want to use it for. And how will you manage it? Tony will tell you a little bit about that shortly. But managing data is just as important as working it correctly, because if you've got no way of managing that data, you've got no way of updating it, you've got no way of keeping on top of it, you've got no way of monitoring and the metrics and results that come from that data. So using data. Data can be used in so many different ways, and from a really kind of top level sales and marketing approach to data, calling data is still really effective. Over 50% of senior decision makers will still take a call, an inbound cold call. So it's vitally important that if you can pick up the phone and speak to people. I think that human interaction is really, really important. Email, 86% of B2B marketers use email as their preferred route of communication. It's a really effective way of speaking to people. Email communication and the way email recipients, i.e. all of us, engage with emails now has changed dramatically. So if you're buying email data and you're using it to email, when you're considering that campaign, either lean on an expert like a marketing agency, or lean on the data provider to help you with that, or lean on the expertise you've got internally. Emails aren't always opened instantly, aren't always clicked on, because we're told more and more now not to click on links from email senders that we don't know. And a lot of people now will open an email and go straight to your website. Make sure you've got a way of capturing that journey to understand what's happening from point A where the email lands to point B where they try and engage with you. What happened in between? Attribution is really important, and what you don't want to do is be attributing a website visit that was triggered by an email down to search, because that throws out your metrics for other campaigns that you're running. Social, used well, this can complement other activities and can also lead a lot of other activities as well. Direct mail, still a really, really strong source of engaging with businesses. For every 1,000 targeted mails sent out, recent stats suggest that you should get around about 40 positive responses, which is great. And I think what that tells us is that not many people get letters anymore. When a letter lands on your desk, you're more likely to open it, you're more likely to have a look at it. What you choose to do with that, or what the recipient chooses to do with that, is very difficult to monitor. But those that respond have actively responded to something they've physically engaged with, and therefore they're more likely to be engaged with you. And then data can be used for market mapping, sizing of businesses, sizing of territories, territory management, and much more besides as well. Now you've used the data, you've bought the data, you've cleaned the data, you want to measure success. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. What's really key is that before you start any campaign, is that you agree what success looks like before you start. Otherwise, you're measuring as you go, and it's important to have that flexibility, but also knowing what you want to get from it will help drive the results that you want to get. And KPIs could be anything from levels of engagement, deliverability of emails. Not to overload you with stats, but global average on email deliverability at the moment is 80%. So if you're getting anything above that, that's really strong. Call connectivity, the data that we take in and pass on gets around about a 98% call connectivity rate, which means that the numbers that we're providing are there. Conversion rates, response rates, and obviously new customers onboarded or retained. And retaining customers for a lot of businesses is as important, if not more important, than finding new businesses to work with. So make sure you've got your measurement metrics there in place, and analysing data from campaigns allows you to adjust your tactics as you go, improve future outcomes, and it just ensures that in continuous improvement along the way. I won't talk too much about managing data, but if you are going to manage data, when you've got data, you will need to manage it, and you'll need to put it into some sort of CRM. What that CRM looks like and its functionality is really down to the needs of your business. But if you're going to invest in a data management tool like a CRM, ensure that the people within your business are actively using it, because the data will only be as good as the information that they tag onto it. And this can be good for adding new contacts, number of employees, turnover, sector, branches, all sorts of different things that you might want to measure within a business. Having a CRM is also the first step in ensuring that you are compliant and that you are ensuring that the data is being managed and looked after well. GDPR and PECA aren't that scary. I think people get really bogged down in what these things mean. Don't be an idiot. Just treat people how you want to be treated as a data recipient. So when you get an email, how do you react to that? What's your general feeling about that? Because the person you're sending an email to is pretty similar to you. So if you don't like to be spoken to in a particular way, change that. Don't force the proposition on someone. Be conversational. I think what people tend to like and react to well is, if I read this and I can do my job better in 2 minutes' time, then great. And if they ask you to stop communicating with them, just stop communicating with them, because they're not interested. Move on. It's GDPR is not hard. And if you ever get stuck, just ask for help. There's lots of businesses out there, lots of organisations that will help. Will cut through some of that noise. And if you don't know where to turn, the ICO has a lot of free tools on their website to help you with data governance and ensuring that you are being as compliant as you possibly can be. Thank you for humouring me. I'll open it up to questions now, or if you want to keep them for once Tony's done his piece, up to you. Any questions? No?
I got a question.
Go on. I thought you might.
When you talk about being GDPR compliant,
Yes.
This is something we come up against every day
Okay.
when we talk data with our customers. How is market location GDPR compliant?
Okay. Very good question.
I thought it might be.
Yeah. So we, from a compliance point of view, when we collect data, at the point of collecting the data from the person on the phone, is we tell them what we're going to do with the data. So the start of the call will go something along the lines of, we're calling from the 118 group and we're calling to update your free directory inquiries listing. The information that I'm about to take can and will be used by third parties for sales and marketing activities. If you want to opt out of that, this is your opportunity to do that now. We get a lot of people opting out. We have 6 million records and 2 million of those we're allowed to sell. So the majority of those records have opted out from sales and marketing activity. But the records that we do have are collected under legitimate interest, which is, from a GDPR point of view, you've got two real measures. One is assumed consent, which is your information is on LinkedIn. I'm assuming that you put it on LinkedIn for anyone to contact you. It can be intrusive, it can be irritating, and it's not always the best way of going about things. Not just because it might feel like you're forcing yourself on someone, but they might have moved business. And actually, if their information isn't up to date, you're damaging your brand by speaking to the wrong person. Legitimate interest allows people to opt out of that type of communication. So it's really important for me to emphasize that we're not opting anybody in, but we're giving everybody the opportunity to opt out as and when they want to. And our opt-out list is huge. And it gets updated every day at midnight, passed on to every single one of our clients to ensure that they know who's opted out and they can update the data set that we've given them. We work really closely with the ICO. We are audited between 2 and 4 times a year. And all we have on our shelves is data. If we get that wrong, we've got nothing left to sell. So we have to be as compliant as we possibly can be. We work really closely with the DMA and the ICO to ensure that our compliance is there. And we work with the industry on creating compliance and creating policy as well. So not only are we being compliant, but we're trying to ensure that as an industry, we're as compliant as we possibly can be. We've also got our own in-house compliance officer. We're the only UK data business that's got a dedicated compliance team. It can be frustrating from a commercial point of view sometimes, but it is something that sets us apart and ensures that when we're speaking to customers, they can be assured that the data they're going to take is compliant, is as accurate as it possibly can be, and complies with everything that it needs to comply with. Does that answer your question?
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
I will leave Tony to talk about boiling frogs now. And yeah, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
I'm going to leave that there. I don't like slides. Okay, boiling frogs. Yeah, bad choice, potentially, considering where we're at. Who am I first? Why am I here? Okay, so like all of us here, I probably wear lots of different hats. I've got my nerd hat on today, as Steve mentioned, because I want to come down and talk to you all about CRM and data. But why do I think I'm qualified to do that? Well, in my current incarnation, we're a HubSpot and Salesforce partner. So that means we work with CRM systems. I run a business, small business, not very many people in it. And I'm fully trained, accredited in all sorts of CRM stuff, right? So we're the receptacle in many ways. We're the receptacle of all this data that Steve's been talking about. What else? Well, before I decided to go part-time and work for myself, I used to work for proper businesses. In Swansea, actually, I ran the South Wales Evening Post for a while, if you may be familiar with the Evening Post, Real Radio before that. I was in London running something called Team Rock. Before that, my finest moment as MD of Metal Hammer magazine. No, okay, right. Nobody ever recognizes that one, right? And before that, I was a salesperson. I was a B2B salesperson, right? So I met most of my customers on the street, as it were, knocking doors, rather than necessarily emailing them, ringing them up like we used to do back in the bad old days, okay? So I've been through a lot of the stuff. And one of the fascinations I have as a consultant, particularly, and just generally as a nerd generally, is how small businesses become big businesses. And that's led me to think about the difference between small businesses and big businesses. I can see we've got Days here, which is a relatively big business. Not so you'd notice if you work for Days, I'm sure, but and we've got Rethink PRs, is that somebody say? Rethink as well, relatively small business. And we've got other people in between. Are you an accountant? Did I hear? Are you on your own?
No, active accountant.
Oh, is that a big one, is it? How big is it?
About 20.
20. Okay, so nice medium-sized business. Anybody owner-operator on their own? We've got small charity here as well, if we got that. Is it small charity? Okay, right, so I'm fascinated by how you smaller and medium-sized businesses become big businesses, if that's all you want to do, right? So that's where I started thinking about this point. And I think overall, I came to this perspective that the main difference between small businesses and big businesses is focus. Okay, so I'm going to explain that. Okay, that's what I want to talk to you about. Does anybody know the story of the boiling frog? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. I thought everybody would know what I was going to be talking about. Okay, so if you're actually part of Park Tower, I apologize in advance for talking about this story. Didn't realize quite how piquant it would be where we're at. So the story goes, right, the boiling frog story goes, if you throw a frog into boiling water, what do you think it does? It jumps straight out. Fairly obvious, right? However, if you really want frog soup, if you put a frog into a pan of cold water and slowly heat it up, you can boil the frog quite successfully because it doesn't realize that everything's getting hotter and it's in fact going to die horribly in boiling water. Okay, so if you put a frog into a pan of boiling water, it jumps straight back out. If you put it into cold water and slowly heat it up, you can boil your frog, right? Makes sense, doesn't it? Sort of, I don't know whether it's true. No frogs are harmed in the making of this example, but it sort of stands to reason, right? So the metaphor, what am I talking about? Most businesses that we deal with, and I've dealt with, are really good at jumping into boiling water and recognizing that they've just jumped into boiling water and then jumping back out, or at least trying to. They don't always get out. They may call the accountants and say, shit. But when a crisis occurs in your business, you're usually able to react to it, right? You're usually able to do something. Now, what you don't realize is the mess you're in. I say that, right? Not you, when you're in. The mess you're in until you're able to sort of step out and look around and see what's happening because the water is boiling around you constantly. And that's what I mean by focus, right? If you're in a relatively small business especially, you suffer from something called a lack of something called corporate memory, for instance. That means you tend to run around with your hair on fire quite a lot, solving the same problems over and over again. Does anybody recognize that sort of scenario? Why is this? Why do we do this? It might be that every year you hit a certain point in the year and take a dip. Happens to everybody, doesn't it? Well, no, it doesn't happen to everybody. What's the difference between the customers who are able to jump into that hot water and then jump straight back out again versus the ones who find themselves getting boiled alive? In my opinion, it's data. See what I did there? Frog, boiling water, data. Right, now I can move on. If most of the businesses we deal with, right, and this is whether they're big, medium-sized or small, do not know what they are doing. They are in effect sitting in a pan of cold water getting boiled alive. And the reason they don't know what they're doing is because they don't know anything about their data. I could tell you of a business we've recently worked with 200 people turning over £50 million who don't have a CRM. They have no idea what they're doing. Doesn't mean they don't work their nuts off. Doesn't mean they don't come into work every day and jump out of boiling water. Doesn't mean they're not all running around with their hair on fire, solving problems left, right, and centre, and then not remembering any of the problems that they solved and coming in the next day and solving them again, because that's what usually happens, right? What it means is they're not able to see what's going on. They're not able to have that context. They don't have that focus that I'm talking about. Does that make sense? So there's two types of businesses, right? For the purpose of this talk. Two types of businesses. There's a top-down business and there's a bottom-up business. Anybody like to guess at what a top-down business is? No, not very comfortable people in here guessing wise. Yeah. So often, somebody at the top will go, do this thing, and it's sort of pushed down through the organization, right? Top-down thinking, as it were. Bottom-up is the opposite. Bottom-up, sometimes called transactional. Bottom-up is when the people at the bottom, dare I say it, so customer-facing, for instance, they're the ones running around doing everything, and they haven't really got any connection to the top. So you have, in that case, you have what you call a strategic misalignment, right? So in other words, we don't know what we're doing. We know we're doing something, we don't know why we're doing it, and we don't know what impact it's having. And in a top-down organization, if you have strategic misalignment, the top is walking around going, this is great. Have you seen that meme? Maybe I should go on with this one. You know that dog sitting in the room and the room's on fire? And the dog's going, this is fine, right? The top down, without strategic alignment, and sitting there going, this is fantastic. Everything's going great. Because they've got a strategy. They've done all their planning. They've probably got somebody like me and a consultant who's worked on the plan for them. They've got a plan. But nobody doing any work knows what the plan is, right? So they lack what I call connective tissue in their organization. They lack the ability to understand the top, to understand what the bottom is doing. The bottom to feed up, it's called a feedback loop. Bottom to feed up to the top so that the top can change the plans that they've got going on, which allows them to tell when the water's boiling, right? It allows them to say, oh, things aren't going well. It could be trading, it could be team related, it could be culture related, it could be customer related, it could be anything. If we're not utilizing the data that we have in our business, we don't know what's going on. We're in the boiling water, okay? Right, brilliant. One of the ways we connect businesses top and bottom together is through something we call the management control system. Very posh, right? It's basically a dashboard, for want of a better word. And it's a dashboard that allows you to see whether or not you're achieving your strategy. Does anybody know what their business's strategy is? Could you say what a strategic objective for their business? Yes? Go on then. Be brave. Be brave. Stand up on a chair. No.
We had kind of recently changed.
Which is what you know. Cool.
We just going to a completely different sector, so we have a new objective.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So classic business strategy situation. Either you're trying to launch a new product or you're trying to move into a new sector or a new market, right? Usually because the sector or the market we're in is not doing what we needed to do anymore, or because we spot an opportunity, or because we think we should be there. So that's a strategic objective. Does anybody in the business know how you're going to do that? Right. So the strategic layer that we're talking about, right? This alignment we're talking about is you have a strategic objective at the top of the business. What is it we want to do? And then we have how are we going to do it? Now, if you're really clever, and I'm sure you've done this, you'll also go, why do we think that's going to work? Okay. But then right at the bottom layer, we're going to say, how do we know we're doing the thing that we said we're going to do well enough to get to where we want to be? That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about strategic alignment, right? So I'm on the bottom of the organization working away. Not only do I know what the strategic objective is, so I know what I'm working towards, but I know how well I'm doing in terms of achieving that objective. That's what we call a strategically aligned organization. If you've worked for businesses previously, or maybe your current business doesn't have that strategic alignment, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the vast majority of businesses we work with don't. They don't have that strategic alignment. Okay, what's this got to do with CRM? Nobody knows. Good. I'm still on strong ground. Okay. Another audience participation moment. Let's go. Does anybody know what a CRM is? Yes? A couple of nods. Good. Would anybody be brave enough to describe it for the group?
Like a workflow management, sort of all-encompassing management.
Nice. Like a workflow
Yeah.
management, all-encompassing sort of management thing, like that. Anybody got anything else they would say a CRM is? Inbound marketing. We have HubSpot. I'm a HubSpot partner. Did I tell you that? Yeah. Just thought I'd mention that part. No pressure, but you know, we'll have a chat after. Inbound marketing, right? So CRMs can be used to manage marketing, which is probably why most of us are here. Anything else? Manage targets. Brilliant. We're hot on the managing side, I can see. Anybody?
Yeah, do data collection.
Data collection. Surveys. Brilliant. Brilliant. So there's three, broadly speaking, there's three things a typical, take HubSpot as an example, or Salesforce, three things that a CRM can do. The one thing we describe a CRM is as a system of record. Okay, so this is the place in your business that all the data that Steve sold you, or all the data that you've collected, all the data that you've worked hard at gathering from events or from customers buying from you and everything else, is recorded. We sometimes call it a single customer view. Anybody come across that term? So in your organization, you may very well have multiple customer views. So you have customer data in Outlook or Gmail. You have customer data in Excel or QuickBooks. You have customer data in your CRM. You have customer data in your project management software. You have customer data in all the salespeople's Excel sheets, which, by the way, are non-GDPR compliant. That's another story. You've got data all over the place. Right? So the idea of bringing it all into one place, into a single customer view, means you're able to manage the data far more effectively. And it means your data is much more likely to be compliant, as Steve was saying, and much more likely to be useful. Does anybody know what third-party data is? Steve sort of touched on it. Data you get from a third party, right? So market location. The reason we work with market location is because they're the only ones in the whole world of data, which we work with a lot, Apollo, Cognizant, Lead Forensics, Lusher. Market location, the only ones we trust, because the vast majority of data providers out there are ripping people off, as far as I'm concerned, right? We don't think market location do. And we also like Steve, because he's the nicest person in B2B marketing that I've ever met. He's the only person who talks almost as much as I do. Zero-party data is data that you supplied yourself. It's the best data you can get. Your customer has come up and signed up to your website, and they've bought from you, and they've engaged with you. They've sent you an email. You've had a phone call with them. They've gone to your website. They've clicked on different pages. That's your data that you've gathered on that person. That data is 100% accurate. So from a day's, well, I don't know what you guys do in days, but from a car dealership perspective, there might be a customer who's come in and bought 4 cars over their lifetime, and days know what those cars were. They know how long they ran them for. They know where they had the services and when they had the services done, and all sorts of cool stuff like that, right? That's zero-party data, sometimes first-party data, zero-party data. It's the best data you can possibly have. Your system of record, your CRM, is for that data. And strictly, when you're buying data in, that data should wash straight back out if you don't get any use out of it. So if you reach out to those people, you don't convert them, you should swish it straight back out, right? What usually happens is people, salespeople especially, sales directors, hang on to that data forever and never want to let it go. Because every single data record in their CRM system is a potential customer. But it's not. That's why I took one business that I ran from 1 million data records to 115,000 overnight. Because the data was crap. There's just no point in having it. There's just no point in having it. But we get wedded to it because it's a bit of a get out of jail free card. Oh, we've got 1 million records. Oh, we've got 250,000 records. Nah, zero party data is the best data, right? So it's a system of record. That's the first thing, and arguably the important. Some of the ladies here have talked about the tools that a CRM can provide you with as well. So CRM is a tool set for sales and marketing people, particularly customer service people, if you've got a good one like HubSpot, and finance people potentially, if they could ever be bothered to look at the CRM rather than doing whatever it is they do. It's a set of tools. So if I send an email, I can send it through my CRM. If I make a phone call, I can do it through my CRM. The advantage of that is my CRM is automatically creating data on my behalf. So when I was young, it was a long time before, when most of you lot were young, we used to write it down. At the end of the day and at the end of the week, I had to actually write down on a piece of paper what I'd done. Brilliant, because you could just make things up on the spot. And you only had to do it once a week. Right, so that was the data the business had. And somebody would take that data off a piece of paper and maybe they put it into a spreadsheet. Now, you just use your CRM system, and your CRM system is recording it for you. It's one of the main benefits to using a CRM if you're not management, if you're not leadership. The fact that I'm doing my job in the CRM system, talking to customers, sending emails, making phone calls, booking meetings, setting tasks for myself, copying other people in, and so on and so on and so on. And maybe automating those tasks as well. So most CRMs will offer you something called marketing automation or sales automation that allow you to do all sorts of clever things, like sending sequences, for instance. So sequence being a series of emails that you can send to somebody to try and get an appointment off them. Okay, and the third thing, the final thing your CRM is, so we've got a system of record, we've got a series of tool sets, depending if you're a sales marketer or customer service person. And the third one is a data layer, is a reporting layer. Okay, now, if you use any CRM system, but you can, often they're supplemented with something called BI systems, business overlays sometimes. You pull all your data out of the CRM and you use it to guide your business, don't you? You use it to make what we call data-driven decisions. Anybody heard that term? Anybody tried to do it? It's really hard. If you can do it, then you're in the minority, right? For a couple of reasons, which I'll talk about. But the whole point is, we now don't have to guess anymore. We do things that the data is telling us we do. We can still take guesses. We can still make intuitive leaps. There's still a place for creativity, but it's underpinned by data. Okay? If you are using that data within your CRM to make those decisions, you have that focus that I was talking about, and you will be a successful business. If you aren't using that data, then you don't have that focus, and you won't be successful. Eventually, it'll catch up with you. But most businesses that have grown really quick without data, it's because demand is overwhelming their ability to supply the market, economics. They grow their business despite themselves. Until they get to a point, like all businesses do, according to the Boston Consultancy Group Matrix and lots of other people, they get to the point where the business has grown into maturity. And now they're like, what do we do now? Now we've got to make decisions. Now we've got to move. We've got to go to a different product or go into a different marketplace. How do we do that? Well, we don't know, because we haven't got any data. Or worse, we got data, data's in the CRM. Does anybody like relate to this? But nobody trusts the data. Anybody got a CRM in which they don't trust the data? Yeah. Yeah.
Just started using it, but just trying to get everyone to use it fully.
So we specialize in, plug your HubSpot people, right? We specialize in CRM adoption, okay? Because if you don't get people to use your CRM, then your data is shit. If your data is shit, nobody uses the CRM. Hey! It's as simple as that, right? Now, most businesses who specialize in adoption do training, which is really important. CRMs are designed to be idiot-proof. If you can't use a CRM, there's something wrong with you. I'm not talking about maybe building really complicated reports or like super complicated automations. I'm talking about using the CRM. If you can't use a CRM, then you're clearly a bit hard of thinking, right? We're getting to a point with technology where you won't even need to use the CRM. I sent a 50-page CRM audit document to a client yesterday. The response was, wow, this is fantastic, so professional, so packed with information. It must have taken you ages. I'm going to send it to our BD team. They'll go through it and we'll come back to you, right? How long do you think it takes us to do a CRM audit like that? It would have taken a week. Now it takes 5 minutes because I plug the CRM into ChatGPT and I go, ChatGPT, check out the CRM, let me know all the things you want me to do. And out comes the report, right? We're working towards something called a single screen CRM. So if you use HubSpot at the moment, or any CRM, you know you've got a contact screen, you've got a company screen, you've got a deal screen, you jump in between screens all the time, right? You have to know how to navigate your way around. We're not very far away from a single screen, and even HubSpot does it now. You're able to say, who's my best customer? And you'll get the answer. Or send an email to the 50 closest matches to this profile, and it'll do it for you, right? So again, training is not the answer to adoption. Data is the answer to adoption. Because if I haven't got data I can trust, I'm not going to use it. And if I don't use it, I haven't got data I can trust. And this is the issue that you have. Okay, so CRM, system of record, tool set, and a data layer, if you like, a reporting or a data layer. It all comes down to the data that is in the system. Because none of the other things work if that's not correct. That's why data is so important. And that's why when we do adoption programs with people, we build this MCS. The MCS being a management control system, sorry, bit of jargon, I know, but this is what aligns that strategic objective that you have with the things that you do and how well you're doing them to allow you to achieve the objective. So you set an objective for your business. We want to drive 25% revenue growth this year. That's a strategic objective, typical strategic objective. How are you going to do it? Probably got ideas yourselves now. You know, what could we do? So you come up with 4 or 5 ideas. We test them maybe. We do a bit of research into them perhaps. And we pick 3 of them. We're going to do those 3. Then we measure how well we are achieving those 3 strategic objectives. And if we're failing, if we've got a feedback loop going on and we're failing to achieve those strategic objectives, we can take corrective action. That's how we grow. That's how we grow the business. Using data, being data-driven, making data-driven decisions, and using the CRM to guide us. Being focused on the things we know we need to do in order to grow. Most businesses we work with don't have that focus. Most of the time, that's because their data is rubbish and they can't concentrate on it, or they don't even know what their strategic and their operational objectives are anyway, in which case they don't align. So, circling right away back to my frog, my fascination is in how do we help small and medium businesses become big businesses. For me, it's not about teaching you how to use your CRM, which is part of it. It's not about choosing the right CRM, which is part of it. It's hugely dependent on the data that is in your CRM, which is why we recommend market location and this thing zero-party data that you gather yourselves. If you're a charity, data on your biggest donations, vital, absolutely vital information, right? We work on this strategic alignment. We work on your MCS. So we create an MCS for you that allows you to run your business, right? So as an MD or the owner-operator, you're sitting in a monthly KPI meeting looking at 4 measures, not 40 measures. You're not trying to put fires out on a daily basis. People know what they're doing, they know why they're doing it, and they know the impact that they're having on the business. And you're able to review that in short order, rather than like most small businesses run around like maniacs, trying to do everything all the time for everybody. So that's why you have CRM, so that you can avoid the effect of being boiled in the pan of cold water and steer the business to where it wants to go. That's it. We've done it. I don't know how long that was. It felt like about 5 minutes, probably a bit longer. Lots of bored people. Feet were starting to flag. Where's those bacon rolls? So I thought, better stop. Does anybody have any questions, in all seriousness? No, can we go? They're all going, can we go, Steve? Yes, sir, please. Oh, heck.
I deal with a lot of small businesses. I work with we deal with businesses a lot. A lot of the problems that they have is that they see it as a massive mountain that they've got to climb just to get their data right in the first place. So business is okay, my order book's full for the next 12 months. Why do I need to look further than that? I'll park that CRM stuff and I'll put it fine. How do we get over that sort of barrier of, God, there's so much work, 50,000 records. How do I manage those? How do I clean that? How do I do that? How do you get over that barrier in the first place? Because when I'm speaking to businesses, that's probably the barrier.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Potentially what they're saying is, I've got too much to do. right? Or I've got so much to do.
My water group's full.
Yeah.
Why do I need
Yeah,
to bother?
exactly. So the key for me is if you look at this MCS idea, the idea is to help them understand or help them work out for themselves, right? Which data points are the important ones for them? Because it's so easy. If you're going to do a strategy for somebody, most consultants, you'll end up with 4, 5, 10, 15 objectives. It's too much. For a small business, you may only want one objective. And we need to reassure them that that's the case. And we need to reassure them that the data they need may just be their order book. Maybe that is their data. So actually, what they're intuitively doing is really good data practice because they're looking at forecasting on a very regular basis. What would drop out of that? Well, maybe the speed that orders are moving through my pipeline, or maybe how much I've got booked in advance, or maybe that's all they need. So we need to reassure them of that. They don't have to look at they don't have to look at what's the word I'm looking for? Prospecting for new business, maybe. They don't have to worry about doing social media. We're full of all this stuff that we should be doing, especially if you're on LinkedIn, because there's a million people telling you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. Most of it is just rubbish anyway. So this is what the MCS or the management control system is all about. How do you achieve your strategy? Has he got a strategy, right? The small business or she? Right. If they've got a strategy, how do they know that they are affecting their strategy? And then if it's one person, it's one thing. It's just as simple as that. Great question.
Another one, in terms of strategy and KPIs, I've worked with businesses in the past, it's not necessarily now because I've written strategy for our teams, but I've worked with businesses in the past and they've just said, there's a CRM, get on with it.
Yeah.
And they have got no strategy. They don't know what they want to get from it. They've heard these fantastic things about what CRM can do and make your life a lot easier, but often the people who are working CRM don't know.
I go 90% of the time.
If you don't know what it's capable of,
Yeah.
you don't know how to run it.
Well, yes, right up until that point,
yes.
I was like totally with you, right?
Okay.
But part of the issue we have is when people go, I don't even know what it does, right? And then people like me come along and go, well, where do we start? Look at all these things it does. Now go back to that your micro business or your small business, and now they're going because they don't need any of that. You use the CRM, and it is very tempting, especially when it's an expensive one like HubSpot, to think, I need to get more out of my CRM. Well, you don't need to get more out of it. You need to get out of it what it is you need to get out of it, which is the ability to stick to your strategy. But yes, scroll back a little bit. Most of the adoption programs we do, somebody has said somewhere, we need to sell more stuff, let's get a CRM. Which is a bit like, we need to build a house, let's get a hammer. It's exactly the same, because it's just a tool. It's just a strategic tool. Probably you'd be better off with a piece of paper at that level, this is almost literally what we do, is to try and create that connective tissue between the strategy and what people are doing. And most of the time, they don't even have a strategy. And most people won't admit it. Most people don't know that they even have one or not.
I think where we've worked well with clients together is where they're swapping from one CRM to another, and that whole strategy piece is being done at the same time. And what we will do as two organizations working together is try and understand what they want to get from the CRM, but also the data that they've currently got, understand the data they've currently got, take it away and give it back to them in an organized way that says, you work with butchers, bakers and candlestick makers, 40% of your data is butchers, but you've only got 10% of the butchers in the whole of the UK. So part of your strategy probably could be going out and working, finding more butchers and prospect them, because you clearly speak to them well. And we found that out because you've already got this data, because it's already in your CRM. That can help you then understand where to go next, where to look and how to look. And also at the bottom part of that is 80% of your, or maybe 25% of your data is candlestick makers. You've actually got 80% of the candlestick makers already in the UK. So why have you got 3 people prospecting for more when you're doing really well on that market? Go over and do the bit you're not so good at, but you can be better at. And I think it's at that swap over point, it's a really good opportunity to stop and review, but it's also a good opportunity to do that at least once a year. Understand where the opportunities are.
There's a brilliant example there, right, of really well-intentioned strategic thinking. And what happens is Steve is the MD, you know, and he goes, strategically, we have to break into a new sector, or we have to increase our penetration in an existing sector, right? But we have no idea whether there's product market fit,
Nope.
whether there's an addressable market there that's worth going after, or any of these other things, right? But we give it to the marketing team, and the marketing team now running around like maniacs trying to get data, okay? So if we were going to turn that into a strategic activity, we'd go, the strategic objective is to increase the penetration in this key B2B market, butchers or bakers, right? How are we going to do that is the next phase. That's the planning stage, right? We come up with a plan. We're going to ring Steve from market location, okay? How do we know that's going to work? Why do we think that's going to work, right? So we do a little bit of research on that. We call it a market opportunity navigator sometimes, that sort of piece. And then we go, how do we know we're being successful when that happens? Okay, so that's how we go from, here's a great idea, which is what most MDs throw out to people, to this is part of our strategic alignment. This is what we're doing for our business. So Rethink recently had a rebrand. Oh, it wasn't all that recently, was it? You guys Rethink? Shut up, 4 or 5 years ago. What were you called before that? Who? MGP. Natasha, wasn't it? Is she still there? Ah, she's lush. Right. So I happen to know, because I've got a little bit of insight, right? Just before Rethink were about to rebrand and launch as Rethink, there was an advertising agency in Cardiff with exactly the same idea, with exactly the same name. Do you remember that? Do you guys remember that? Ask Natasha when you go back, right? So literally, they were about to launch as Rethink at exactly the same time. As it happens, the guys in Cardiff were very polite and very nice and stepped aside for Natasha to carry on and do the things she wanted to do, which is great, right? But from a strategic perspective, that could have been an absolute disaster. If it wasn't for her ability to jump out of the boiling water and get things fixed, that could have been a nightmare. So how do you offset that? By making it through this strategic alignment, by creating this system of what's an objective, how are we going to do it, how are we going to know how do we know that's the best way to do it, and how do we know that we're being successful when we do that thing? It's a great example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony.
Any other? I could talk all day, clearly. Fantastic. I think we've done them. I think we're exhausted.
Thank you ever so much for coming. Thank you for humouring us both. I hope you've learned at least one thing, if not two.
Which is that we can both talk for Wales.
Yeah. And if you've got questions that you want to ask outside of this, feel free to reach
absolutely.
out. I want to thank Plantasia for allowing us to host a very unusual location. And I think there is going to be an opportunity to hang around and hold an animal or two if you wanted to.
There's some crocodiles around there.
Yeah,
I saw that.
yeah,
Hold a crocodile.
which I'm sure is probably the only reason some of you have come, and I'm all right with that. But thanks ever so much, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.